right, so I finally put a oil pressure gauge on my truck. Because of the sensor flipping out, which again is not an uncommon problem with these trucks, but I just wasn't convinced that it was no longer just a bad sensor. So what I did is find out that I'm having some problems. Is the truck starts fine between 40 and 60 psi, but once it warms up, it's going down to about 10 or even lower, barely registering. What I did is to prolong the life of the car until I have a chance to pull the engine on this. And the good news is it's not fluctuating up and down, it's just low, which is probably just a pump. But in these Fords, getting the oil pan off is just a pain. So I am going to up the idle. I already did it actually. I upped the idle from 750 RPMs to right around 11, a little short of 1100 RPMs, to keep the oil pressure at around 10 psi at a very minimum. The switch on these will flip after around 8, after it goes below 8. So to prolong the life of the car. Again, what's weird about this car is it's not making noise like it's low on oil pressure. It's not acting like it, but I have concerns, so I don't want to ruin the engine. This truck isn't driven all the time. It's just driven to get stuff right now. Its truck is going to be going to my daughter that will be driving here in about 6 months. So what I'll do is wait for the weather to change. I'll have to rent a shop to pull the engine out. You know, I might be able to get away with not pulling the engine just to get to the bottom of the pan, but it's going to be a pain. I got to yank the transmission out and do some other stuff. So at this point, I just upped the RPMs on it to keep it going. But, you know, the sad thing is the switch was accurate. It flipping out was a problem. It's too low. And the best thing you can do is just when this happens is bring your RPMs up and keep it above 10 PSI and prolong it. But, you know, that points to sometimes you have no choice but to go the extra mile to check it out and make sure it's good. Do the stop idle. In a car, there's a screw behind the idle plate. It's called the stop idle. You just move it forward. It's a 3/8 wrench, and you just move it forward. I moved this car to idle right around 10,050 RPMs to keep the oil pressure up. I'll drop it after a while to see if it improves. But there's a screw right there, and that's all you have to do. It's under the cover. And then I let the car sit and cool, and notice, man, I was losing radiator fluid out the back of the radiator coolant out the back of the tailpipe, and it was so bad it was draining from the back of the catalytic converter. So based on those tests, I have blown head gaskets in the car. Now the weather's not good. I really don't want to do this right now. It's very cold out, and so I'm going to try use the ultra strength head gasket sealer. This thing's about a 4-gallon, so I'll use the whole container. But on the instructions, when you use this stuff, you actually have to remove the thermostat. You drain the radiator, you fill it up with water, re-drain it again, and then put coolant back in. So I'm draining it right now. I'm going to go ahead and yank the the thermostat out right now while this is draining, and then I'll put this stuff in with water into the radiator. The key thing is you got to remove the thermostat with this stuff. So since I've already used a sealant before, I haven't used the extra strength stuff, so I'm assuming that this isn't going to work, but I'm going to try to keep my hopes up. The head gaskets on a push rod engine are a pain in the ass. I have experience with overhead cams, but I do not have experience with push rod, so I'm trying to avoid that. Since the car isn't driven a lot daily and all that, again, I'm not as nervous about the whole thing. But from this standpoint, I'm going to give it a shot, see if this fixes it, see if I stop leaking out the back of the tailpipe. Maybe it'll improve the oil pressure on this, and we'll go from there. So why it's important to read the instructions on this head gasket sealer. You're supposed to run the Blue Devil Radiator Flush before you put the sealer in there. So I went ahead and had to run back to the store and I bought it. And I went ahead and added it. It says you run the car for 10 minutes. And so I'm going to let it run for 10 minutes, flush it again, then finally get to put that stuff in. So head gap, you want to remove the radiator or the thermostat before you do it, which I've done. And now I'm going to let it sit, and then I'll have to wait for it to cool, and then I'll go ahead and flush it and try the other stuff. All right, so I finished the first flush. I'm going to go ahead and fill it back up and put the head gasket sealer in. What you do is you fill your radiator about halfway, and then start the car and pour that stuff in, let it sit. So I flushed it, put some more water in it, flushed it again. Now I'm ready for the actual sealant stuff. and the car is no longer leaking coolant from the tailpipe. It was gushing out huge amounts of it for a long time. It's no longer doing that. It was leaking so bad it was leaking from the joints. So at this point, car is running cool, and I'm gonna go ahead and fill it back up with radiator coolant, and I should be good to go. I believe this fixed it. Car's running a lot better. I'm not having the problems. I'm not seeing the black exhaust or the gray exhaust coming out the back. So fingers crossed, I'm good to go here. So I need to reinstall the thermostat and flush the radiator, fill it with coolant, and I should be done.